The Seahawks came into this past Sunday's game against the San Francisco 49ers with their season on the line. They were losers of 5 of their last 6 games, and it was not trending in a good direction, with the team seemingly cutting a new defensive starter every other week, including their leading tackler last week. Then we got news just a couple of days before this game that their starting center, Connor Williams, was going to pull a mid-season retirement. It was looking mighty bleak for this team in a very tough matchup. Add on to that the fact that you have a bit of the pride factor involved here, where this Niner team has had the better of you in 6 straight matchups. And not only have those all been losses in those matchups, but they have not been pretty. They've been drubbings, most of them at that. So the Seahawks came into it with their back against the wall, with no more room for error. Got to come away with this win by hook or crook, and they stood tall and came away with a complete team victory. It starts first in this game with the defense. The offense is worthy of being lauded, the special teams right along with them, but I have been very impressed by this defense over the past 2 weeks. McVay, Shanahan, these are 2 of the guys that you're bringing in to McDonald to slay here. He is the guy with his mind that you hope can counter the chess matches that those guys pull out, as they oftentimes will be throwing 4D chest at you from the defensive side of the ball, and if you're not matching that energy, they will hit you and they will hurt you in a heartbeat. But the past couple of weeks, we started to see more of the iteration of this Mike McDonald defense, more of the flavor he brings in his approach, more of some of that spice he's got to give, and you were able to put the clamps down on this Niner defense. It starts with stopping the run. You got to earn the right to rush the passer. You got to try to make them one-dimensional. And something that stood out about the Seahawks defense through a lot of this year and a lot of these games, especially where it's gone bad for them, is that they can't stop the run from the first opening bell to the last, and that you may still find the win, you may not, but you're not stopping the run throughout. Well, here in this game from the start, by and large, you stop the run. You look at the bottom line from McCaffrey, 19 carries, 79 yards, and this was going to be a typical kind of McCaffrey performance with the Niners, where they were going to run him, they were going to ride him until the hoofs fell off this horse. And that's just the way you felt from him in this game, but he wasn't getting enough yards for that to sustain them. They were becoming then one-dimensional the more this game went along, and you're going to force Purdy to beat you with his arm. And what's notable about that is, despite then forcing them down that road, you still held the Niners to the lowest output of total passing yards in this game that they've seen in 23 games. It shows the level of how well you played this, and it wasn't merely you just rushing the passer and inundating him with pressure. In a lot of ways, it was you dropping those guys to depth and coverage, squeezing down those zones, flipping up the coverages from pre to post snap, really challenging Brock Purdy and his ability to process pre to post snap, because that's a lot of what he does really well. He will ascertain what's going on, make his reads, get through his reads quick at times, throw with anticipation. I thought we saw actually a pretty decent version of Purdy out there and what he brought. But the Niners were also shorthanded. You had no Brandon Ayuk, who was there for the first matchup against the Hawks. And then you had no George Kittle, which I know that would have been a matchup the Niners would have loved to have exploited, having a little bit of Kittle there with Tyrese Knight. Weren't able to do that in this game. So you were a little limited on your playmakers. And let's face it, McCaffrey is not anywhere near 100% right now. He is nowhere near as explosive as he was last year. And so you were able to benefit a little bit from that defensively. Still, they played very disciplined. A lot of credit's going to go over there to the inside linebackers and your new changes there. But as Mike McDonald noted in his press conference, it's all 11 guys across the board doing their job by and large, especially that defensive line. The new guy, Roy Robertson Harris, that they traded for was very physical, was very beastly in the running game and what he brought. Williams continues to have a very solid season for your Seahawks there, the highly paid inside defensive tackle that they signed. Everybody was basically doing their job on that inside, that defensive line, and maintaining their gap integrity. A lot of what San Francisco tries to do offensively is run those sort of stretch plays where they get your defensive linemen going laterally, and as they get you overstretched laterally to try to chase to a spot to the edge, that's where the running back then cuts back inside. So it very much challenges you to be disciplined and to remain in your gap integrity while still kind of staying shoulder to shoulder with the man next to you. It's a little bit like the phalanx back with all the old Roman days and how they would do that and construct that in their battle plans. Very similar in how you want to do it against this Niner rushing attack. And it's hard to beat, easier said than done, especially with how diversified it can be and how wide they'll attack you with. And I felt like Shanahan brought out his full bag as far as his rushing attack today and tried to do all of his little iterations of things, and really none of it was working. Great job by the defense on everybody on that point. Certainly the inside linebackers, though, deserve a ton of credit. 13 tackles for Ernest Jones. He's been a difference maker for you at the inside linebacker position since coming a couple of weeks ago. You have felt a completely different effect from that middle linebacker position. His ability to fill the lane, his ability to be instinctual, his ability to be on the spot in the right place, not to get confused or misdirected, not to take on a block softly, to arrive at the ball carrier and then to bring that ball carrier down. Not to arrive at the ball carrier and then he runs runs you over for a couple of extra yards. And that's a really thing that does stand out with Ernest Jones as well. Of the track record on him was a little bit, but watch him in coverage. You look out for that. That's not going to be as good. I don't see him even really getting really exploited that much in coverage either, as he's been pretty steady there on that other side. Not great, but just steady, not a liability. Tyrese Knight, 10 tackles behind him. It's always nice when your 1-2 tacklers on your team are your inside linebackers. And while I want to give credit to that defensive line, and your safeties did their part to help out as well, definitely the inside linebackers have been improved in their play overall. And what we saw in this game against this Niner team, both those guys were great, rolling out there and doing their job. Boye Mafe deserves some credit for a couple of tip passes in this game where he's not been able to generate as much pressure as this year's gone along. I've had a sneaking suspicion he might be dealing with some kind of little nagging injury situation there, but found a way to have his impact. Devin Witherspoon probably had his best game of the year, I would say. 8 tackles, 3 passes defensed. One of those was on a blitz. Another of those was where he caused the one lone turnover for your Seahawks on the day, and a really outstanding play on his part. He's driving on a stop route, basically. He comes up. Those players always as corners are scrambling to get up there. So they're running full speed, and then they tend to, within their running motion, extend their hand down, and the hand comes down like a windmill to knock the ball down if they can get their hand in there in time before the receiver can make the catch. What's cool about this with Witherspoon on that play is he gets his hand in there, but he turns his hand over and tips the ball up so that he's sort of created almost a volleyball-like situation and knocking the ball up. And in doing so, knocks the ball that much higher up into the air instead of down, giving Hankins some time to get up under the ball and go make the interception. Everybody loves a big man interception. Julian Love and Kobe Bryant continue to be a very solid tandem back there in their play, and I don't know how you find a way to put Rayshawn Jenkins in place of Kobe Bryant at this point with how solid he's been out there in every single game he's played filling in for Rayshawn Jenkins. It's a good problem to have for a Seahawks team that at times has been thin in certain spots as you get a little bit more depth there, but I'd keep rocking with Kobe Bryant as he's getting more and more comfortable in that safety role, and they've been a very good tandem. The offense took some time to find their footing in this game, and the defense had to hold on there. And while the Niners did get some very long drives and were able to control this clock through most of this football game, you came through that first half with them only getting 1 touchdown. And they were able to really keep the clamps down on the San Francisco offense throughout until the offense could kind of find itself on the other side of things and go win the day for this team. But a great effort by the defense, and cool the past 2 weeks here to see McVay and Shanahan getting a little bit of compromise, let's say, by McDonald and his scheme and his ability to drop a great game plan. We now are truly getting chess on chess. Not checkers on chess, but chess on chess. When it comes to the offense, let's start with Geno Smith. He was very good. Was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect. But was there some things at play that have remained at play as far as problematic, like drops? Yeah. Did the interception, that bad interception, always seems to rear its ugly head every single game with him come up again where it's inexcusable and you go, Geno, don't do that. Yes. But was he also damn accurate throughout this game? Yeah. Did he also give you a lot of wow throws? A few throws in there that there are some quarterbacks in this sport that just cannot make? Yeah, he did. 3rd down and 14 to DK Metcalf just after that interception where you need that first down the moment the offense has got nothing going. It needs a shot of life in the arm, and he puts that ball right up over the top, layers it right in there for DK to make the catch. Wonderful throw in that moment. He had a couple of other ones in addition to that throughout this game as he shows you on a weekly basis and how he's got it. But where he showed you he's really got the stones and where he's really got that clutch gene as now 10 game-winning drives for Geno Smith in the 4th quarter in games over the last 2.5 years of play. And there are 2 more, by the way, that he actually pulled off and got them in a position to win. One was a Jason Myers missed field goal last year against the Rams. And then this year we had the Giants game where he drove them down, and then you had the block kick at the end there by the Giants, and he got them in position there. So that's really 12 game-winning drives conducted by Geno Smith in just about 2.5 years here for your Seattle Seahawks. And this one might have been the best of the bunch. Geno Smith can take a whole day where you might have some ups and downs, and it's all nothing but good. And I think overall Geno did play a good game, but that drive was absolutely masterful on his point. You've got 2 minutes from the Seahawks perspective. You have 1 timeout, so not a lot of room for error there. You have 80 yards. You got to go down the field, and you need a touchdown here. Field goal will not do. And Geno operated that drive just like a conductor through a symphony. He knew how much yards he needed on every down. He knew where the throw he needed to make. He used the downs up. He wasn't trying to get too much down the field and press too much, taking advantage of some of the soft zones of the San Francisco 49ers to earn his way up on the field. Even the first throw, which is an out route to DK Metcalf, 12-yard throw, got to be on the line, got to be on time, and DK able with that toe tag, drag, swag, able to make the completion, and boy did that set you up for the rest of the drive, because it took about 7 seconds off the clock. DK gets out of bounds. You still have 2 stoppages of the clock. It allowed Geno to kind of slow roll his way up to the midfield marker at the 2-minute mark and then work his way down after the 2-minute mark to get down to the touchdown. But perfectly executed drive. You left nothing but 12 seconds on the clock. Geno 4 game with a scramble and 2 scrambles, key scrambles at that in that late part of that drive. But an absolutely wonderfully executed drive by Geno Smith, and he has shown us time and time again that he has that clutch gene, that he can bring you back, and that he is very good in 2-minute situations. Even on this day, as far as the final stats are concerned, 25 of 32, 221 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. That's not going to light anybody up, but that's why you got to look sometimes a little bit past the box stats, stare and stuff, and look at really what's going on. Like I said, there was probably 3 drops in this game. You have a DK play down the field on a deep route early on, where it's about a 40-yard play that gets wiped off the books. There's a couple other drops, including at least, I think, a 14, 15-yarder in there to AJ Barner that he also dropped. So easily, probably at least another 60, 70 yards of passing that was left on the board by those drops that's outside of his control. Pre-snap penalties still came up a little bit at times to neutralize some of these drives. Not as bad as they've been. It was more cleaned up on the front of the offensive line, but it was there a little bit. Snap kind of over his head. And that one might have even been more on Geno on that snap, but still something that you're still kind of having to overcome outside of just playing the quarterback position. But Geno was very good. Still didn't have much of a running game to operate off of in this day. Kenneth Walker, 14 carries, 54 yards, only averaging 3.9 yards today. And it was a hard-fought, hard-found 54 yards at that. Zach Charbonnet, 4 carries, only 3 yards. Geno Smith was also your second leading rusher with 4 carries and 29 yards. So he's able to get it down the ground, as I said, with 2 of those big scrambles at the end. Hope he can use and build upon a little bit more of that as we go forward here, because there's definitely a lot of room and opening for it as teams aren't worried or thinking he's ever going to run, but he can do that. He's not necessarily a lateral guy, but he can get going forward really well. And again, just a wonderful drive at the end there to go take that win. What a way to go do that after you've lost 6 straight times to the San Francisco 49ers. It punctuated this win very nicely. In this case, again, too, you might be putting the Niners away in this kind of victory, but that's a conversation for another day. It's in Jackson Smith-Njigba, another 110-yard performance after coming off his best career performance last week by far, and they were money catches, money moments. This is how you can feel a third down slot guy, quote unquote, historically as they'd be labeled, how they can now be a difference maker in the modern era, because you're not just using them on third down, and they will move chains throughout, and they will be there almost always open, depending on if you're getting a defense sliding into some of that soft zone coverage stuff that we saw today. And Geno was able to slice and dice and pinpoint into Jackson at just the right moments, get those third down conversions, keep the chains moving, including that final drive. And how about Jackson being so steady with his hands in this game? 11 targets, 10 catches, 110 yards, and some of those throws, Geno was having to put a little bit of velocity and heat on him to make sure that he could fit him into tight spots in those third downs. And Jackson made sure he'd sell out with his body, just cradle it on in there, make sure I'm catching this thing no matter what. But excellent performance by Jackson Smith. He's probably had 2 of his 3 best performances as a Seattle Seahawk over the past 2 weeks. Maybe the light bulb has just clicked on and everything's kind of clicked right into place, and that's how it can work for a young player. DK Metcalf had a bit of a brutal drop early on this game, but he turned it all back around. Had a couple of those toe tag, drag, swag kind of plays. 7 catches, 70 yards. He was steady Eddie throughout in this game when you did go to him. He had a couple of different routes he ran, including the out route, slant route. And if you could just get that completion early on, where you love how they used him and they bring him on a kind of condensed split into the slot, you end up in your maneuvering of him into the slot in that moment where you get him lined up on D winners down the field 40 yards. And you love Geno's choice there to just throw that trust ball down to DK. Now just got to reel that in on that spot. But still a good overall day from DK. He was also a really good blocker in the run game to my eyes. The offensive line had one of their better performances of the year. Abraham Lucas was returning back into the fold. The team is still being very careful with him, rotating him out through series with Jarrell. Jarrell maybe had one of his better games of the year for the rookie 6th rounder, who's just getting more and more acclimated in here as a guy that maybe has at the very least could be a rotational guy for you long term. But Lucas looked pretty solid out there to my eyes. He didn't get a chance to really concentrate and lock fully on him, but he was at least solid. Didn't look like he was a shell of himself or he was dragging his leg along out there. The rest of the line held up pretty well well in addition to that. It seemed like Geno had a little bit more time to operate back there in the pocket today, a little bit more time to go through his reads. It did help in this game that you had Nick Bosa go down kind of late into the third quarter, I believe, with that hip injury that he had walking into this game. And once that Niner defense lost Nick Bosa, they lost their pass rush. Nobody else was really able to carry much of the day at that point, and you could just feel that Geno was a lot more comfortable once Bosa was off the field. But wouldn't we all be at that point in time? So a solid performance by the offense. You'd love to run the ball a little bit better. I think they're still restricted in the fact that they're just not getting much push up front in that way. Grubb's finding at times some creative things within that. I really love the usage of the tunnel screen game where they'll run it 3-4 times a game and they'll run it to all different guys. You might see it run to Jackson. You might see it run to DK. Tyler might be a threat. Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, but even the tight end where you had in this game AJ Barner in chipping on the start of a play where he looks like he's in helping in pass protection and then he's actually leaking out as the tunnel screen guy. So a lot of kind of inventive ways Grubb was sort of finding there to be able to, again, manufacture at times a little bit of offense when your offense is just not finding any real footing throughout the day. As well as even though the running game at times can be a little bit head scratching, let's call it, when you have a 4th down and goal and you're just kind of back to back going with Charbonnet to hammer there up the middle and you're going, ugh, that's not very inventive. But Grubb does come back in other ways at times where you're down at the goal line and he brings out an offensive lineman as a fullback. And I think for a lot of defenses, if you get a goal line look from an offense, you're on the half-yard line, 1.5-yard line, and you see that that's an offensive lineman who's stationed out there at the fullback position, you're probably, your eyes, your general flow of traffic is going to go to where that offensive lineman goes. And what the Hawks did in that moment instead is that they ran the fullback as the offensive lineman in one direction, and then they handed off to Kenneth Walker in the other direction to go get the touchdown. And I think that might have opened up things just a little bit. So Grubb does show some creative flourishes here at times with this offense when it is tough sledding. I don't think this is purely the Waldron situation where he just sort of shrugs and he's like, I'm trying to call it. I'm doing what I can. It's just not happening. The special teams unit continued to show you that they are a strong third phase of this football team, and they were good again today. Michael Dixon on only 2 punts averaged 48.5 yards, but he continues to be good to great as he ever is. Jason Myers continues to show you that he is in a Dr. Jekyll, not Mr. Hyde year, as he was perfect on the day, 2 of 2 on the field goal attempts, 2 extra points. And those 2 field goal attempts, by the way, were tricky. 50-plus yarders. One of those was right from the midfield stripe. Kind of somewhat blustery feeling conditions at the time when he kicked it, and he was still able to knock it almost right through the uprights. Great job by the special teams. You needed all those points by Myers today to come away with the victory as you did, but they've done that this year by and large, and they show you that's a very key part of this football team. Make no mistake about it, this is a big-time win for your Seahawks. San Francisco 49er fans are going to downplay it and talk all about the injuries. We can play that game. We had plenty of injuries on our side as well. Half this game, we've got our 4th-string tackle out there, for God's sake. But this is a big time win, not only because the Seattle Seahawks salvaged their season as they now find themselves well within their own control to determine their fate. We don't have to rely on this team or rely on that team to do this. We can go out there and get it done on our own by going out and winning. That's what it really comes down to here, especially with 2 games up on the schedule against the current first place Arizona Cardinals. So that's a good feeling on that. Also, as well as that one extra little bit of frosting over the top of this cake, is that you may have potentially put that final nail into the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl window. At least as far as if you were to hear their fans talk about it after this game, they are truly distraught. They feel out. They feel ready to call it a day to turn this thing over. Hell, maybe even some of them fire Kyle Shanahan. So that's also a good feeling that this sort of signature win kind of comes with that at the same time. We put them to bed, we start to come alive, and everything is right again in the world. This team is fighting. This team is resilient. They're going to keep after it throughout a whole course of a game. As there are a lot of cracks and holes and things to clean up, there absolutely is. But is the defense playing better? You better believe it is. They have past couple of weeks. And you got DK Metcalf back. You're getting Abraham Lucas rounded into shape. You might even have an Uchenna Nwosu down the line coming back to return to this defense and help out the rotations off the edge. So keep hope alive, my fellow Seahawks fans. We'll let the Niners fall into their own misery. We'll let them go into that dark hole that they're about to jump into. We, on the other hand, we control our fate. We have everything within our hands this season. I know the Lions look like a juggernaut. I know they beat the doors off us, but it's a long year as we've learned, and nothing has been decided yet. My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. But beyond all that, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.